G'day there, Ray Corcoran here. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to get out of debt. And for obvious reasons, debt is not a lot of fun. In the States, there are the average credit card debt is about $5,700 and the average credit card debt in Australia is about $4,200 Australian. And the question we kind of want to answer today is like, how do you get out of debt and how do you get out of debt fast? Because we haven't got 10 years to get out of debt. And I'm talking specifically about bad debt like credit card debt. Debt is a big problem for a number of reasons, and one of the reasons you want to obviously get out of debt is because if you're in debt, you're not really going to be able to invest. And if you think about building your wealth like a rungs on a ladder, we want to start off with, obviously, you want to go from being in debt, your next level up is being broke. And then once you've gone from broke, you want to go to having a savings buffer. And then beyond a savings buffer, you want to start with potentially getting, some investments. And then beyond that, you want to get multiple investments and so on. So before we get into the actual tips themselves, I just wanted to share a story because, when I was in my early 20s, I was in about $70,000 to $80,000 of debt. And that was extremely stressful. And at the time, I just didn't know what I was doing. I was not earning a lot, and I wasn't spending it on silly things like clubbing or like I was still doing all those things, but the reason for the debt was actually just like I was buying marketing courses and being a part of business groups and all this sort of stuff, and you're spending a few thousand here, 10,000 there, 5,000 there, and it really added up. After doing a few stupid things like that, it got to a point where it was like, $70,000 plus. It got extremely stressful because I didn't have the cash coming in to pay for all of that. Anyone that's, been in debt can understand how with all these high interest rates, it's like a freight train that's starting to get away from you a bit, and it's getting a bit of momentum and it's like a snowball. And with all the really, really high interest rates on credit cards, you kind of feel like the debt's getting bigger than at a faster rate than you can pay it off, which is pretty disempowering. So the first thing you need to do is work out how much you actually owe to the cent. Now, it's really important that you get the exact amount as of right now, just so you can get total clarity. One of the hardest parts about having debt is it's just gotten so big or so out of control that you don't even know how much you owe. You need to figure out how much exactly you owe and to whom. So I'd really recommend breaking it down into, you need to break it down into highest interest all the way down to lowest interest rate. So one way to think about it is if you had an investment where you could make a guaranteed, some of these credit card interest rates are like, 15%, 18%, something ridiculous. So think about if you had an investment opportunity where if you put in $100, you could get back an 18% guaranteed return with a degree of 100% certainty. That is literally the same thing as you paying off some of your highest interest debt. So it's really important that we knock off the really, really high interest stuff first, and then work our way down to the lower interest and lower pressure sort of debt. So get the exact number, find it out, set aside a couple of hours and get clear on the exact amount. The second thing we want to do is, I mentioned this in another video in terms of saving, but it applies to debt as well. And that's to put the number in a prominent place. So when I had that big amount of debt in my early 20s, I saw this internet marketer guy, John Reese. I just saw some random video and he talked about this exact topic and how he wrote the exact number out on a piece of paper and stuck it on the wall, I think in his bedroom or his bathroom or somewhere where he would see it every day. And at the time I was like, how funny that I see this right now with this debt I've got. I'm going to try it, how could it hurt basically? So I wrote it down. And it was a very small thing, but for me, I found it very, very beneficial in terms of psychology and getting momentum. And I'm sure there's some science behind this, but the fact that I had the exact number written on the piece of paper, and every time I updated it, I crossed out the number and wrote the new number. So I went from $74,231.22 to $71,222.10 or something like that. But every time it knocked off, and then it got into the 60s. And then it got into the 50s, and then it got into the 40s, and so on. And it's like when you're in a running race, the closer you get to the finish line, you kind of summon up that little extra bit of energy. And you'll find that when you start to get within striking distance of that last little bit of debt, it's just the floodgates open and you'll just start going really, really hard at it. And that's what I found. I just found when I got closer and closer, I'm like, you know what, it's not that big number anymore. It's a good chunk lower than that. And now I'm getting more and more momentum. Number 3 is we need to cut up all your credit cards. Anything that's causing you more debt right now, obviously we need to get that out of the way. So whether you need, you either cut up all your credit cards or you cut up all your credit cards bar one and drastically reduce the limit for like maybe some small expenditures that you need to pay. Just cut up the credit cards, get rid of them, get them out of your life. You know, you can't have, it's going to be like for trying to fill up a leaky bucket if you're trying to accumulate money, but you're still actually spending a little bit more. Your spending is what got you into this situation, and a lack of spending is going to get you out. Number 4 is leverage balance transfers. So obviously when you move from credit card to credit card, you can look at balance transfers where you can get an interest-free period. So different credit card companies will compete for your business. And if they can say, hey, if you want to take all your credit card debt from one provider to us, we'll actually give you 60 days or 30 days or whatever in interest-free period. Now, when your debt is accumulating and you're getting hammered with high interest rates, it can be a bit of a breather. But a word of caution, you need to be careful with doing this and read the paperwork and the fine print to make sure that typically after that balance transfer period is over, the sort of interest-free period, what's going to happen is you're going to have often an even higher interest rate on the end of that. So if you don't trust yourself with doing that, don't do it. But if you're pretty confident that you're like, you know what, in that period, I can really make the most of it and try and knock off some of the debt, that can be a really, really good option to do multiple balance transfers. Number 5, so it's really, really important that you don't just make the minimum monthly repayment. You know, it's the minimum monthly repayment is literally like the most pathetic end of things. And obviously you might need to start there, but every extra dollar counts, especially early on. If you want to be strict at any point in this paying off the debt journey, the earlier, the better. Number 6 is you want to be going over how much you actually make total. If you've got one job or multiple jobs, whatever it is, just work out how much you make per month and also look at how much you're currently spending per month and maybe look at the last 3 or 6 months to see how much you have coming in and what you have coming out every month. And we do that to establish how much of your debt you're actually going to be paying off every month. And I've mentioned this in another video. We want to work out roughly what rate you're paying your debt off at. So if you're, an example I used in another video was like if you're making 5,000 and you're spending 4,000 and you're paying off $1,000 every month and you've got 70,000 or 60,000 in debt, it's going to take you 5 years to pay that off. So for many people, this won't be acceptable or it won't be ideal. So you need to work out, we need to drop your expenses and your costs and work on. And then once you've done that, let's look at increasing your income. Can you work more hours, second or third job? Work on getting promotion, which might not be immediate, but you can build up to that in a couple of months. And look at the maths. It's really, I find that a lot of people skip this step. It's really important to work out the maths because you need to be realistic. Like I've had certain times where I've been saving for something or trying to pay something off, and then I've worked out the actual maths and I've realized that the rate I'm going at is nowhere near the rate that I need to be going at for me to have achieved that goal in the time frame that I want. So very important to work out what rate you're currently paying it off, because that will give you a specific date as well, which is really important. It'll give you a specific date when you expect that debt to be paid off. So you'll know by 8th of December 2022 that debt will be paid. The next step is really around managing your psychology as you pay off the debt. So throughout this process, because if you've got like a significant amount of debt, like I did, of bad debt, your emotions are going to be going up and down along the way. You can have days where you feel like you're not making any progress. You can have days where you didn't add or pay off as much as you wanted to. That's all to be expected. It happens to everybody, and you need to understand, be aware of that. Your emotions will go up and down along that journey, because it's not like it's a marathon, not a sprint. So you need to make sure that you're not getting too caught up. If you have one bad week, who cares? Just get back on the horse and look at what can I do better next week or next month to ensure that my costs stay low, my income stays as high as possible, and that I allocate as much as possible to the debt in the next period, and maybe try and play catch up. And you're going to have to, the reality is you're going to have to cut your lifestyle a lot. And this probably ties into one of my last points, which is there's going to be a lot of hard decisions you have to make, depending on how much debt's a scale, right? So you might have a little bit of debt, it's easier to manage, or a heap of debt, which is very stressful, really majorly affecting your life, relationships, all that sort of stuff. So if it's a lot of debt, if you're on the higher end of how much debt it is, for those people, everyone's gonna have to make hard decisions, but you even more so. So if you have a large amount of debt, you're gonna need to make some hard decisions. You're gonna have to live in areas you probably don't wanna live in, potentially. You're gonna have to live in a house that you may not wanna live in. It's not the standard you would like to live in. You may need to skip events that you would love to go to, and you really, really wanna go to. You may not be eating as nice a food, maybe as you want. These are all the hard decisions that you need to make. And as I've mentioned in my previous videos, don't do half saving. You know, if that's anyone that does half saving, they take forever to do everything. People that want a little bit of luxury, a little bit of this, you know, they always say, oh, I've got to live, I've got to treat myself, you know, I don't live to work and all this rubbish. I fully disagree with that. I think that is the most backwards thing ever. If you're in debt, you've done some silly things, just like I did. You've done some silly things, you need to pay the price, literally, and now is the time to pay it all off, get it all sorted, and so you can move forward with your life. I don't see the point in just scraping by every year because you need to live a little. For me, that's not living. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound fun at all. Hope those tips have helped. If you liked the video, give it a like. Give it a like multiple times if you need to. And if you want to subscribe. This channel's in its early days, so would love for you to subscribe and get involved. If you have any questions, let me know. If you found it useful, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next video. Cheers.